there's been kind of an eye-opening to the possibilities of, what does a better work-life balance look like in the industry, and how do we use stuff like technology to facilitate that?
This is the Construction Veteran Podcast. Construction Veterans Podcast. Connecting and celebrating veterans in construction. Now, here's your host, Scott Friend.
Welcome back to the Construction Veteran Podcast. I'm your host, Scott Friend. I'm excited to bring you guys two former naval officers that started a technology platform that assists with labor tracking throughout the industry. Let's dig into it. Hey guys, how's it going?
Good. How you doing, Scott?
Good. Zach, Drew, I really appreciate you guys joining me. Thank you very much.
Good to be here.
Yeah, absolutely. So I said in the intro a little bit about what you guys do at Rumbix. We haven't personally met, but as a superintendent, this is something I'm very interested in technology-wise, using that system someday, hopefully. So Zach, I'll start with you, and then we'll kick it over to Drew. Why don't you tell us a little bit about your service background?
Yeah, so I was a officer in the U.S. Navy Civil Engineer Corps, the Fighting Seabees, for about 5 years. Went through ROTC as a commissioning source, and was on active duty from 2006 to 2011. So had a couple different tours with the Civil Engineer Corps. I was up at Naval Station Everett, working both in a construction manager capacity as well as assistant public works officer, and then was out in Camp Lemonnier, Djibouti, helping build out that base from a FOB to a more permanent base presence back in 2010 to 2011.
Very cool. Appreciate it. So Drew, how about yourself?
Yeah, joined the Navy in the submarine force, so did the nuclear engineering school, and then was stationed on a fast tech submarine based out of Pearl Harbor for some time, and then did a shore duty teaching ROTC back at Notre Dame, where I went undergrad before heading out west here to go to business school at Stanford, where I met Zach.
Oh, that's awesome. I didn't know you guys met in school. That's cool. So I'll let folks in on a little bit of info. So Zach and I didn't realize until about 10 minutes before this interview that we grew up 10 minutes from each other. We're both Seabees. It's just wild. So I think that's nuts. But Drew, his last name is my favorite brand. So for all you Milwaukee folks out there, I'm sorry, but DeWalt over Milwaukee all day. So you guys have a really cool story. You're in a very niche part of this industry. I'll kick it to either of you who want to explain, but tell me what you guys are doing now in the construction world.
Yeah, I'm happy to kick it off. So, my background from my military experience got exposed to construction, which was great and very transferable kind of post separation into what Drew and I are doing now. But basically was working on a large copper mine project in northern Chile back in 2013, so about a decade ago, and had about a $900 million cost overrun on that project that was really driven by the lack of timely reporting of field data. All of our information was coming in via 1,000 paper time cards getting submitted, handwritten Chilean Spanish every day. And so that was the big kind of light bulb epiphany moment that led to Rumbix. And so what we've done is build out software, mobile first software that super usable in the field. Foreman, superintendents, cleans up all their administrative paperwork, helps them track stuff like timekeeping, job cost accounting, labor and safety reporting, daily reporting, kind of a super intuitive, easy to use mobile front end that captures a lot better, richer data than the trailer and the home office are able to use, both from project management, but as well helping feed payroll, accounting, finance teams with all the information that they need to help deliver projects on time, under budget.
Cool. So Drew, I mean, I understand with Zach's background in the construction industry, in the military, and kind of making that transition, but what got you into this, Drew?
Yeah, no, it's interesting. It was sort of a straight line via a circuitous route, but coming out of the submarine force. I really liked the engineering aspect of it and thought about staying in and around the energy industry. So I spent some time working for oil and gas companies and renewable type projects. So got into project development. And the first business I started out of business schools with some Chilean guys to try to build a power plant down in Chile. And so we were working on a giga solar and pumped hydro asset. So I was down there for about a year. And as we mentioned, like Zach and I coincidentally were down in northern Chile at the same time. And I was again on the development project side and really trying to figure out the cost and schedule for this asset that we wanted to finance and build. It just wasn't good information to try to do a great job about it. And so that's when Zach and I started chatting, and it was, it's like, I don't know some great ways because, a lot of companies are still missing on this sort of thing. And so we got to what we felt like was the heart of the issue was not only is the ability to collect information and get that into systems inhibited, the ability to standardize, understand the structure of that data, the historical trends, and analyze it was also inhibited, which then makes it tough to plan and project future projects. And so it was kind of full life cycle coming in from the, more development side of the house, realizing like even developers are taking construction risk. And this is something that a thoughtful company like Rumbix could help in a big way with.
Yeah, I love that. You saw an issue, you knew how to resolve it, and you helped. So I think this is obviously something very helpful for folks within the industry. So I want to back up a little bit. So both of you guys ended up on this job in Chile. Zach, I'll start with you. So going from the Seabees and getting on to work like that, I mean, you said 900 million. Is that right? It was over budget.
Yeah, it was a $3.5 billion project that went 900 million over budget.
So how do you go from jobs? I mean, we both know in the military, you're typically not seeing jobs of that caliber. So what got you into that part of the industry?
Yeah. And, the skills and everything you learn with the bees scales, the construction is done the same way. It's just a lot bigger scale and scope of project. I was working with Bechtel Corporation at the time, and Bechtel actually is a lot like the military, global jobs all around the world. So, a lot of the projects you work on can kind of feel like deployments of sorts and good opportunity to travel and see the world. And so, that naturally kind of led me to Bechtel, and was on a couple of different jobs with them during my time with Bechtel. But at the end of the day, when you're managing work on any given day, it's managed the same way, whether that's a $100,000 project or a $3.5 billion copper concentrator. It's just the scope and the magnitude are a lot bigger, and the opportunity for cost overruns, as was the case on this project, was a lot bigger as well.
Yeah, I've told people before, drywall's drywall, right? So you got the guy that's doing the small interior fit out, 20,000 square feet, and then you go to the 1,000,000 square foot job. I mean, the product doesn't change as much. It's just that scale and the team. So Drew, is that, I don't want to put words in your mouth, but was it that overseas work that you were used to of the service? Is that what drew you to it as well? Or was there something different?
I think it was a mix of things, for sure. Not as much the overseas aspect. It's just, I think you learn skills in the military. You hopefully enjoy building teams, leading teams, motivating teams. And so that's part of it, which can lead you towards entrepreneurship. And then, I don't know, I think there's, when you could broadly bucket military experience as quote unquote non-traditional experience. And I do think there's a lot of push, and I know Zach and I felt it in grad school, out here in the lap of Silicon Valley, to go get into consumer tech and the Facebooks of the world and doing things like that. And at the end of the day, I know for me, it didn't feel like a good fit with my personality and what I wanted to do. And I think there's a big opportunity with, not just, I'm not saying sticking with what but sticking with in areas that you feel like you have skill and areas that you're motivated to work in. And And I think you see it over and over again. A lot of success in business comes from taking a non-traditional path, getting non-traditional experience, and then applying that to a new problem versus, following the herd. I think there's even a saying that is probably not totally incorrect of, when you look at business school students and the top jobs that they're jockeying for every year, the best thing to do is not do those things, right? Because at the end of the day, that's on average the hot thing, the thing that people are talking about doing, and generally the cyclicality and the faddishness of some of that stuff fades. And so you want to find yourself in a spot you can see yourself spending a long time. And I think all those things were a factor in wanting to do a business in the construction industry.
Yeah, that's awesome. So you guys both took kind of I'll call it a non-traditional route. I think that's a good way to put it, Drew, that you had the non-traditional training, but when you got out, I mean, again, you guys are in a very niche spot, not only now with what you're doing, but what you were doing prior to this at that organization. So if I'm a service member that's getting into the civilian world and I want to stick with construction, or maybe they want to go into construction, if they, Drew, you're a great example. Even though you were in engineering, it wasn't directly construction related. How does somebody even get into an organization that large? Do you think it's knowing somebody, just applying? I'm curious on your thoughts.
I just think right at the end of the day, what I see with a lot of veterans, and I was subject to it myself, there is a bit of a narrative from others, and sometimes even internally with yourself, of, the more the experience doesn't look like a strong match with your previous experience, it's different and can be intimidating. And some people will tell you, go the traditional path. Again, you hear a lot of get into banking or consulting, because that's where you're going to learn the real skill sets of non-military life. And I think that's not false, but it's also not the only path. And at the end of the day, I think when Zach's heard me say, even most business is not rocket science, right? It's sort of maybe 10% super heady stuff and 90% effort and thoughtfulness. And even at a place like SpaceX, and maybe timely or untimely for that analogy, but even at a place like SpaceX, maybe it's 12% rocket science. And so I think a long way to say veterans of all experience are actually very well suited for a range of different careers, including construction, even if they haven't run drywall teams before, to use your example.
Yeah, I'll add
go ahead, Zach.
kind of one thing there is just there's such a shortage of both skilled craft labor, but also field supervision and project managers in the construction industry, that these companies are desperate for talent. And I think actually the veteran skill set is one that many of them recognize is a very good skill set for transferability. Small unit leadership, leading teams in the field, that's something that almost everyone coming out of the military gets some exposure to. But I was just up with one of our customers, API Group, up in Minnesota a couple of weeks ago, and they've got a full-on leadership development program. They recruit very heavily out of the military. Actually, the company was founded and run by a West Point guy, Lee Anderson, until just a few years ago. And so many of the operational companies are all run by veterans that had no prior experience in the construction industry, that joined API and kind of worked their way up through the leadership development pipeline that they've developed. But they've proven out very successfully. You can pluck anyone from a Marine to Army Ranger and teach them what they need to know and be very successful leading an entire construction business.
In fact, most Army and Marines are better than Seabees, really.
Drew, I'm sorry, Drew, I'm losing you. What's that? I can't... Wow, that's
obviously just joking.
Hey, if you listen to my episode with Lisa Jaster, she even said that the Seabees paved the way in Afghanistan. So I'll quote her on that.
Yeah.
So we were boots on ground first. But so I hear you guys both saying something very similar. I'm curious. I have my thoughts. What do you think Zach, you alluded to some of the skills. What do you think are the biggest skills that any veteran brings to our industry, that like maybe those soft skills? Because obviously folks like me, right, I got out as a carpenter. Zach, you were basically running management of construction teams. But what are the skills that are non-construction or engineering related that you guys think people bring to this industry that'll make them successful?
I think, the construction industry, first of all, is more or less organized kind of like the military. So the command and control structure that you get exposed to in the military is not too dissimilar from what you'll find on any project site, any project team. So I think that feels very familiar. I think just like a deployment, a job site on any given day, there's a high degree of uncertainty. It's a dynamic job site where you might have delays, you got another trade that needed to do some rework. And so you need to be comfortable with constant change, which is something that I think everyone in the military gets some degree of exposure to through the work that they do. Also, I think, the construction industry is one that rewards a get shit done ethos and mentality. And I think there's a lot of that in the military as well. A bias towards action to come with solutions to problems rather than pointing your finger at the problem and saying, hey, look at that, somebody should take care of it. And so a lot of accountability, ownership, and yeah, definitely a bias towards action are all things that transfer very well to project execution and work execution out in the field.
I appreciate that feedback. Drew, what do you think?
I mean, Zach and I have talked and do talk about this a lot, so I'd really just reiterate what he said. And I think there's probably the only thing I would add is just the relatability, right? When you talk about small unit leadership, like that's all of business, not just in construction, but it's super important in construction. I think that relatability of having, been on the deck plates, turn some wrenches, and like you're not just a college or whatever student coming out and like learning it, like you've been out there working, and that relatability is actually huge. It's a more like soft skill, but it's huge.
Yeah, so I'm going to switch gears here a little bit. So I was recently on another podcast myself, and we were starting to discuss the construction industry has a lot of burnout, and I'm speaking obviously from experience, but as a vet, we're very type A typically. And what would you say to a veteran within our industry that maybe still has that type A, like go mentality, but it's just getting fed up and burned out in the construction industry? What would you say to encourage that individual? Because we need people to stay in this industry that are good leaders.
Yeah, I think, certainly since COVID in the last 3 years, I think there's been kind of an eye-opening to the possibilities of, what does a better work-life balance look like in the industry, and how do we use stuff like technology to facilitate that? And so, it's tough. There's some jobs that you got to be there, boots on ground. There's no other way the work's going to get done. But I think companies definitely recognize the importance of work-life balance in a way. And also with the talent war, where if they weren't doing things to better kind of retain talent, that they were losing key leaders that they needed to execute work. And so if you are at a company where you're getting burnt out and the company leadership's not listening, I'd encourage you to look for better run companies within the industry versus trying to look for something outside the industry, because the grass is always greener, and a lot of times you get to that other business outside the industry and you just got a whole different set of problems that piss you off every day. And so there are lots of well-run and managed construction companies that put resources in place for mental health, support lines for folks that are dealing with a lot, and just the ability to remove that stigma around talking about, hey, I'm struggling, hey, I need a day off, not to have this kind of tough guy ethos all the time, and make it okay to say, hey, I need some time to decompress. And I think being at an organization that supports a a worker in that way is definitely key to preventing burnout in the long run.
Yeah, and I've talked with other guests about this too. When you're in the service and you get burned out, there's no, hey, I'm going to go ahead and go home now. I'm done. I'm putting in my 2 weeks. So you don't have that opportunity, but in the civilian world you do. So I agree with you, Zach. I think maybe they find some rest somewhere, take a breather, realize, hey, this is not the entire industry. So the flip side of that, Drew, I'd like to hear from you on this. If we have a veteran that's transitioning out of the service, so what would you say to them specifically to encourage them to join this industry?
Yeah. No, I just think it's got a lot of, aspects that resonate with most military folks. As much as obviously if you've gotten out of the military, it means there's things about it that aren't necessarily feel like serving you for a 20, 25, 30-year career. But you also miss some of that stuff. And I remember that. I remember being very ready to be out of the Navy, but at the same time missing aspects of it. And I think the construction industry brings that back in many ways. Just like basic stuff. I'm probably not a great example since I was cooped up on a submarine for a while, but the idea of being stuck in a cubicle most of the day was not enticing to me, right? So the ability to do some heady work, to be outside at times, to be running teams, to be problem solving all the time, it's hard to honestly, candidly find a better fit. I think it's even a better fit than a lot of the more traditional paths for veterans to go into. That's sort of the government contracting route and the other side of the defense coin. That feels easier and feels more translatable, but I would make an argument for construction being an even better fit for what we actually like doing as hard charging service members when we're in.
And
Yeah, obviously I'm very partial. Go ahead, Zach.
I'll add to that. Working in construction, you're never going to have a question at the end of the day around what you got done or what your contribution was. And, quite literally, you can, physically see, the difference from the job site at the beginning of the day to the end of the day. And so, I think a lot of, other industries, it's very hard to kind of judge what you've delivered, your work product, what your efforts actually amounted to in terms of moving the needle. And so one of the things, at least for me, that was most rewarding is, every project I've built, is, probably 40, 50 plus year life cycle. And, that's something I can take my kids to and say, hey, yeah, I built that. I was on that project from first shovel turning dirt to ribbon cutting. And there's not a lot of careers and job fields that you're able to do that as directly as you can in the construction industry.
Yeah, you're speaking my language now, man. I mean, I've said in project interviews too, to some of our current clients now that I really enjoy bringing my family at the end of the day to the job. And like, I'm very proud of what I do. And unless you're in something like manufacturing or, building something, there's not a lot of other industries out there that we can directly out of the military step onto a job site and make that impact to say, I put that work in place. I'm proud of what I did. It's very satisfying. I think you guys would agree with that. So let's say you're back in the service, you're ready to transition out. I assume both of you guys went through some sort of a TAP class. Is that right?
Yeah.
So, Zach, when did you separate from active duty?
2011.
Okay. Oh, same year. Okay. So, Drew, how about yourself?
2010.
Okay. Perfect. So we were all around the same timeline. I don't know if you guys can recall. I know when I transitioned out, there was really no talk about this industry whatsoever. And I don't know. I was in DC at the time. I don't know what your guys' experience was, but they did bring in some professionals, but there was no talk about construction, whether the white or blue collar side. There was no professionals. What was your experience?
Yeah, I can start. Very, very similar. It was, tough to remember TAPS class. There was no talk about the construction industry at all. It was a generic TAPS class with everyone from, kind of every different rating in the Navy in it. And, they taught you, here's a resume, and here's a couple things that you're going to want to put on it, and how to start trying to you know translate your military service into things that should go on a resume. But yeah, I think hopefully it's better now, but I do know, because Drew and I both speak to a lot of veterans transitioning out and trying to figure out their next path and next step, that there's still a big need to fill that gap around better career transition off active duty into any industry, and construction especially.
Okay, so this is going to be kind of a twofold question. So for the companies that you spoke about one of your clients earlier, for these type of companies that really want to hire vets, I'm not saying there's one single right answer. There's no magic pill, but as an industry, we know we want veterans. How do you guys do that? And how do you think other companies could do that better, attracting that talent out of the service?
I mean, I'll take this, and I just think it's like you see what has happened with great programs like SkillBridge and Breakline and others that veterans have taken advantage of. And this is why there's huge veteran communities in your Facebooks, your Cisco's, your Googles now, as you get some folks involved in your business and on the veteran front, like hire a few veterans and then put them in charge of going recruiting more veterans, right? You need to see people on the other side that look like you. And it just starts with a few. And then over time, the other people in your business who have worked with those veterans usually have a really great experience, and they also want to get more folks on the team like that. You want diversity in all different aspects, but for sure, it just starts with one. It starts with two. It starts with a concerted effort, and it doesn't have to be a huge corporate initiative. It can be pretty grassroots earlier on, but it goes back to what I know Zach and I and most veterans we see do, spending a lot of time like veterans helping other veterans. Like, we're on one side of the coin, somebody reaches out, we're going to take that time. And so I would say the quick thing is on the flip side of it is, you bring up like TAP class, like, let's be honest, TAP class is at least mine was a joke. But there are other things to take advantage of, and you cannot be a passive, participant in your own transition.
That's the perfect segue into the second part of that question. So the other side of that is, okay, I'm a veteran that is about to transition out. A lot of the onus is on me to find something. So obviously things like this podcast really open people's eyes to what's out there. But what would you say to that vet to really, where do they even start? How do they find out? I mean, I think we all got into the industry certain ways. Again, the onus is on them, but where do they even go? What do they Google? Who do they talk to? What do you guys think? It's a very broad question. I don't think there's any wrong answer.
Yeah, I think the onus, as Drew's mentioned, like the service members got to take responsibility for figuring out their own career path. Nobody's gonna hold your hand and walk you into a job at any company in any industry. And so the construction industry is huge. There's a lot of different parts of it. There's subcontractors, there's general contractors, there's owner representatives. So I think there's tons of different opportunities online just to research the construction industry. Engineering News Record, ENR, has been publishing top lists for decades of the bigger contractors in the industry. So I think those are always a good place to go and look at who's in the top ratings there. But the one thing I always say is, like, everyone knows somebody in construction. It's an industry as old as humankind almost. Shelter being one of the primary needs we've had since the beginning of evolution. And so talk to somebody, learn about it. It is such a big industry. And then when you're ready and you kind of have an idea of what type of company or what type of work you want to be doing, you want to be indoors, you want to be outdoors. Same way we got connected, Scott. You reach out to me on LinkedIn. I think the LinkedIn is such a great tool these days that almost every construction company has a presence and has folks that are very responsive to outreach. So you can reach out just to have a casual conversation to somebody that works there. Don't even need to be be applying to a job or talking to somebody from the HR department, I think a lot of folks will kind of be willing to take a call and tell you about their job and what they do in the industry. And, start with 5, 10, 15 of those conversations. I guarantee one of them is going to progress to the next stage of, potentially going towards some sort of a job offer or further on in the recruitment process.
Yeah, I'm sure we can both look back at our career and go, man, I'm glad I took that first step. It is the hardest. So I'll kind of wrap it up here, guys. So Zach, I'd be remiss if I didn't give you an opportunity. You touched a little bit on what your company does, but I really want to give you that time to give your spiel, your elevator pitch, if you will. So talk to us about what excites you about what you guys do and how we can get involved and get exposed to the technology.
Yeah, absolutely. Anyone who wants to learn more, you can go to rumbix.com. That's RHUMBIX.com, and you can learn all about it. Drew and I started the business back in 2013. And so, really was at the onset of beginning to see smartphones and iPads and connectivity out on the job site. At the time, really PlanGrid, it was started a couple years ahead of us and did a really good job of digitizing the 2D drawing set workflow on iPads, but we saw the opportunity to capture a whole lot more data that didn't need to go into a project management system. And so this is all your worker level field data, who did what work, what cost codes, how productive were they, track and safety questions. And so, yeah, we're 9.5 years into building the business now, and been awesome to kind of ride that wave of digitization and digital transformation in the construction industry, because I do think it's really just scratching the wave. The first step is creating digital data, but then as we're seeing now with Chat GPT and all the advancements with artificial intelligence and the past few months, especially, structured data is the foundation to a whole lot more. And I think the construction industry as a whole is very early in digital transformation, and just the next couple decades, the industry is going to see more change. There's job site robotics rolling out, all kinds of stuff. And so real excited to be a player in that digital transformation with the business that we've been building here at Rumbix. And if anyone wants to learn more, again, just go to our website and fill out a form, and we can get you set up with a demo pretty quickly.
Very cool, Zach. So, all right, man. Well, I appreciate y'all's time. Again, if you guys want to find out more about Drew or Zach, you can find them on LinkedIn. Zach has a pretty epic mustache in his profile photo, and I love you guys' vest that you wear. I think that's so neat. So thanks again to both of you guys for being on, and we'll catch you next time.
That was good. Thanks, Scott.
If you're a military veteran in the construction industry, or you're in the construction industry and support our military vets, and you'd like to be a guest on the podcast, you can find me at constructionvetpodcast@gmail.com, or send me a message on LinkedIn. You can find me there at Scott Friend. Let's share the stories and motivate others.